We finally have the inside narrative, even though the symptoms have been there for months. The digital breadcrumbs are pointing to an unavoidable conclusion regarding Caitlin Clark's relationship with the Indiana Fever, which is not just strained but shattered. There is a deadline for this partnership. The current events in Indianapolis are not your normal growing pains for a rookie. While everyone has been concentrating on statistics and highlights, there is more going on here, something that has been simmering beneath the surface. After sorting through the clutter and heeding the cues, I've discovered a scenario that is far more intricate than anyone had previously thought. Hi there, my name is Jax Riley. If you've been watching the WNBA Metag game as closely as I have, you are aware that the most significant stories aren't always the ones that make headlines. At times, they remain undetected, waiting for someone to make the connection. We're also pulling the thread on one of the most significant unreported tales in women's basketball today. Please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell before we delve further into this study. Not all of the stories I unearth remain silent for very long, and you don't want to miss what happens next in this dynamic scenario. Now, since the tone of the internet discussion indicates that something fundamental has changed in their connection, let's discuss what's actually going on between Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. The fissures weren't subtle when they first appeared. It's not just critique when a generational talent like Caitlin Clark expresses her displeasure with her use in public. It's a warning message. She added that she is at her finest when we get me the ball in transition, so we need to do a better job of that. Those aren't casual remarks made by a rookie getting used to playing basketball professionally. That person is a genius at spotting systemic issues. However, the tale doesn't stop there. The ensuing events exposed the growing philosophical divide between Clark and the company. Stephanie White, the coach, gave a telling response. A setup centered on two main ball handlers that is meant to shield Clark from pressure from the full court. It seems reasonable on paper. For someone whose entire reputation was based on explosive transition play, it actually meant constraint rather than liberation. Take a moment to consider that. In women's basketball, you have the most explosive transition player, someone who can generate scoring opportunities out of thin air by pulling up from the logo. And the purpose of your method is to restrict her touches in the precise circumstances in which she exerts her dominance. That is fear-based management, not coaching. What then is true, and what is conjecture? The official narrative and the digital reality don't fully match, so let's dissect it. Although official sources won't tell you this, a different picture becomes apparent if you follow the digital breadcrumbs. There is more to Clark's injury predicament than just bad luck. It is a sign of more serious organizational problems. Fans anticipated anxiety, possibly even a formal update regarding their franchise player status, when she was visibly in pain from a groin injury during a game and fighting back tears. Coach White dismissed it instead, telling reporters that Clark was experiencing some minor emotions. In WNBA circles, that small something turned into a lightning rod. Unless there is a discrepancy between the player's representation and the organization's beliefs, you don't downplay your superstar's suffering in that way. Let me now be open and honest. We're getting into the realm of rumors. Although nothing is formally verified, the digital indicators suggest a growing annoyance that transcends basketball ideology. According to those close to the matter, and I'm being careful with my wording because these discussions take place in private, Clark feels underappreciated both organizationally and strategically. Consider it from her point of view. She is bringing in more money for the franchise than ever before. She is a profit center in addition to being a player, as seen by her TV ratings, ticket sales, and jersey sales. Instead of giving her more authority, the corporation has responded by managing her. Agents begin to approach a generational talent when they begin to feel more like property than a partner. Here, the timing is really important, and this is when making the connections becomes critical. In October 2024, the WNBA Players Association chose to withdraw from the current collective bargaining agreement. This implies that everything is negotiable. Player mobility, constraints on free agency, pay scales, and the entire system. Kane is also not waiting for Clark's rookie contract to end in 2028. She is currently setting the foundation. In reality, what does that mean? If you've been paying attention, you'll see that about 87.5% of the anticipated 2025 WNBA All-Stars will be free agents in 2026. It's more than just a statistical outlier. The power dynamics in the league have completely changed as a result. Clark's predicament becomes the model for other players to follow when that pandemonium occurs. The indications indicate something extraordinary, and I've started sorting through the noise. Kane's role extends beyond Clark's representation. She is promoting systemic reform in the league's treatment of its stars by exploiting Clark's profile. The Indiana case serves as an example of what occurs when businesses fail to embrace player empowerment. However, the story doesn't stop there, since the events in Indianapolis go beyond a single player's bond with his team. This relates to the WNBA's transformation from a developmental league to an official professional sports organization. Additionally, players like Clark aren't only vying for titles in that evolution. They are vying with one another to dominate their stories. The division between Clark and Indiana is indicative of a basic aspect of the league's development. New generation superstars who recognize their worth and demand to be treated as such will pose a challenge to traditional franchises that function with antiquated mindsets. Being managed wasn't Clark's reason for joining the WNBA. She arrived to take over, rule, and influence women's basketball going forward. Let's now discuss the actual implications of this for the near future. Clark has a contract with Indiana through 2028, but when connections falter, contracts are simply paper. Even in situations where they appear helpless, intelligent agents discover strategies to gain leverage. That leverage is provided by the CBA talks. Although official sources won't tell you this, an alternative picture of how these negotiations are developing can be found by following the digital breadcrumbs. Kane is not only fighting for improved pay and working conditions. She is advocating for systemic adjustments that would provide athletes greater control over their careers. Additionally, Clark's circumstances in Indiana serve as Exhibit A for the need for such adjustments. There is growing evidence that this is not long-term viable. It's not a random occurrence when your franchise player publicly questions system decisions, when injury management becomes a contentious issue, or when agents strategically show up at rival venues. They are synchronized pressure points intended to bring about change. This raises the question of what will happen next, which is inevitable. Because of this, the current course is driving to confrontation rather than resolution. The entire league environment will change as a result of the upcoming 2026 free agency bonanza. However, Clark's circumstance will serve as a model for other players. Kane can make 2026 less about individual signings and more about a structural power shift if she can effectively use CBA leverage to provide early movement possibilities and show that player empowerment takes precedence over organizational authority. This is what I believe is actually taking place, and this is where the inquiry becomes intriguing yet speculative. In the larger CBA talks, Clark's team is utilizing her Indiana background as a negotiation chip. Every injury dispute, every well-publicized annoyance, and every calculated photo op proves that the existing system is ineffective for elite players. This strategy is brilliant since it avoids pressuring a deal right away. Making a case for methodical change that benefits all parties involved is the goal. Clark becomes the spokesperson for player empowerment because her circumstances highlight issues that impact everyone, not because she is requesting preferential treatment. This is where Indiana supporters should be concerned, though. This tactic is only effective if Clark's worth keeps increasing and her level of happiness with the company drops. And that's precisely what's taking place, based on everything we can observe. It wasn't only a homecoming moment during the most recent exhibition game against Iowa, where Clark made an amazing 36-foot three-pointer from beyond her Memorial Court line. It served as a reminder of her significance outside of Indiana. It was striking imagery as she turned to face the audience with that self-assured smile, and the arena burst into cheers for someone who is now officially a tourist. You won't learn this from official sources, but the symbolism was deliberate. Despite being injured, Clark continues to perform magic in a setting where she is unreservedly praised. That stands in sharp contrast to the management-focused methodology she is dealing with in Indianapolis. What, then, is true, and what is conjecture? Because the distinction between fact and rumor becomes hazy in circumstances such as these, let's dissect it once again. We do know that Clark has publicly voiced his displeasure with her use. The treatment of injuries has generated debate. When she engaged in strategic contacts with rival players, her agency was evident. Additionally, chances for methodical change are being created by the CBA talks. We suspect, but are unable to verify, that the Indiana relationship is irreparable. In larger talks, Kane is using Clark's predicament as leverage. The precedents being created today will have an impact on the 2026 free agency wave.